You'd be surprised just how overdue this video is. A random sub-Saharan African country for a channel with less than 10 videos. But Angola has been practically the main character of my stupid pointless degree. I have written multiple papers on just this country. Paper about a historical figure, Queen Njinga. Final paper about African countries' history, Angolan history. Another final on secondary cities, Angola cities. A paper about sustainability issues in a random sub-Saharan African country, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. But that was only so I could make the arbitrary word count my b****. Well, why did I write about Angola so much? Honestly, Angola highlights everything that we know about African countries. Everything that makes Africa fun to learn about by some degree is represented in Angola. So yeah, with all this research about Angola under my belt, it's about time they got a video. The Geography Now video is really old and outdated, and any large new videos are about Luanda being the most expensive city, which isn't even the case anymore. Angola, it's time to give you some representation. Angola has pretty much all the terrains commonly associated with Africa. Large deserts, savannas, beaches, mountains. Oh yeah, and there's elephants.
Elephant green screen effect.
This really is something to be celebrated. I mean, the largest province is home to some of the most diverse landscapes in the country, and the Wikipedia entry just lists what it borders. Oh yeah, we'd love more coverage of Africa.
Can the world please
but those
learn more
places
about
are
Liberia?
really repressive.
Hey, I built this. Can you
They don't
update
allow
your
much
street
freedom
view?
online,
You have
and they
info
don't
on
have
dirt
much
roads.
infrastructure.
Stupid
It makes it
Westerners.
just too
Shut
hard
up.
to
Cover
traverse
my
these
city.
remote
It's
countries.
huge.
I guess I have to put a little more effort into learning about Angola. Big waterfall, massive river delta and wetlands, and part of the Namib Desert, which I gotta say is the prettiest sandy desert. Sahara fans are seething right now. You have plenty of places to see diverse wildlife, a large beautiful coast, and multiple elevations. A lot of the best places are in the mostly remote and unexplored Mohico province. It's like an Africa in miniature, which is what I would say if Angola wasn't massive. Angola is the 23rd largest country in the world, which doesn't sound that big until I show you how much bigger it is than your precious European countries. Oh yes, that's the second thing. Bad borders. Ah yes, look at these classic, well-made colonialist borders. Angola would be quite proud to join them. If you can't remember where Angola is on a map, just remember, Angola got angles. Straight lines and jagged corners everywhere. The real attention grabber is up here, a disconnected exclave known as Cabinda. It's quite an abnormality, but I'm more invested in this. Why is there just a random square sticking into Zambia? Is there any story behind it? No one really talks about it, so I went online to ask about the history behind this border. It's nothing. That's just a river. He was drawing the border alongside a physical boundary and was like, "Whoa, let's course correct that." Zambia just has 2 protrusions. What about Cabinda? Well, it was simply left behind from the Portuguese Empire as a part of Angola. In fact, Cabinda has a large independence movement, but Angola has quite the iron grip on it, despite not being able to focus on it for years due to war. Oh yeah, that reminds me, the third African stereotype, conflict. Yeah, that's a fun one. Angolan history follows the same path as a lot of African nations. Former influential kingdoms, colonization, independence, conflict, then progress. But Angola has plenty of aspects that make it unique. Angola's history was anything but peaceful. But what makes it interesting to learn about for me is to see how far Angola has come. Their history goes like this. The kingdom of Ndongo is beginning to grow. They're forming relations and dealing with conflicts with neighboring kingdoms. Hey, we've decided to butt in on your naturally progressing history so we can begin our well-renowned Atlantic slave trade, a practice that will revolutionize the world and change Europe for the better, and by extension, you guys. Stop. I am King Njinga. Don't you mean queen? No, we don't follow those gender roles, and I have the status of a king. Yeah, we're just going to ignore that and call you queen forever. Thus began the legacy of Queen Njinga of Angola, a powerful strategist and warrior whose name has become iconic to the history of Angola, Africa, and other Portuguese colonies. Not in America, though. She stood up countlessly to the slave trade, and she had many negotiations with the Portuguese to keep her kingdom alive for as long as possible. and not once did she ever let the Portuguese ever diminish her for being African. Wow, you have such great stories to tell about her. Your word as a first-hand witness is just as valuable as this white guy who writes porn and got arrested for sexual assault. And the sexual escapades he discussed were quite revealing to her character and will be remembered forever. Under Portuguese rule, they were rough victims of the slave trade. After centuries of fighting with the Portuguese, they were finally given independence. And I do mean finally, because they were one of the last countries to get independence. Oh, come on. It's Civil War time. These stories are all pretty emblematic of many histories across the continent. And this was kind of an interesting Cold War proxy war people don't talk about, spearheaded by quite unconventional sides, and the balance between socialism and free markets has a role in their economic structure today. But I'm not really into learning about war dynamics, so we'll skip ahead to peace. Yeah. Cabinda wants independence, still repressive government, new generation of baby boomers thanks to the war ending, oil discovered! Development. This is my favorite thing about learning about Africa, and part of why I enjoy geography in general. I get really invested in countries' development and politics as a whole. Africa is especially fascinating, as their modern history is a lot shorter and they have all needed to find their own path, with varying degrees of success.
I want to watch the scum of the world struggle to climb up the hill of betterment, only to repeatedly trip and tumble down to the fiery pit of failure.
It's like the poster child of urban development in Africa. The skyline is incredibly dynamic, and if you still don't know about Africa having large cities, then this will blow your mind. Angola has begun a lot of development projects after the Civil War ended, and the population began to boom when there was peace. And now the economy is developing faster than ever, with the 6th largest GDP in Africa. It still has many of the same problems as these poor nations. The poverty rate is higher than the percentage of households with electricity. But they're doing better than the other Portuguese African nation that had a long-lasting civil war.
Yeah, look at you owning a bar. You guys are doing pretty good. First you get to run Somalia, now this.
I feel like I've made my point. Angola highlights the main things we know about Africa in the modern world. But at the same time, Angola is a really special country in Africa, and I want to do an overview of cities and places around the country. I don't have time to cover every region, but I want to go through the highlights and look at the diversity Angola has to offer. Luanda. This is the largest city in the country by not a close margin, and one of the largest on the continent. Luanda looks like a modern metropolis and has a large contrast between tall skyscrapers and historical buildings. Although, like most African cities, don't look at the actual neighborhoods of the city. Just look at those first Google results. Yeah. Hey, I said don't look at the different neighborhoods. Yeah, there still is a lot of inequality here, but I promise you things are getting better. For a while, this city was known as the most expensive city in the world. The oil boom in the country increased the wealth of the nation, yet most of the people were not caught up. However, prices have lowered, but it's still one of the most expensive in the world. Now the most expensive cities are Zurich and Singapore, which have much higher quality of life to make up for the cost of living. I guess America and Angola aren't that different after all. The largest ethnic group of the region is Kimbundu, and it's home to the popular music genre of Kuduro, a mix of traditional Angolan music and Western music, which is honestly a little too intense for me. No wonder white people's cultural tastes in music are whatever the heck this is. Thank God we have bongo flavor. Up here is Cabinda, like we mentioned earlier. This is where Angola gets all of its oil money, which is why the city is rich. But apparently it's infamously boring to visit, I guess. But there is the Miombe Forest, one of the largest tropical forests in Africa, with a lot of protected species. This is where all the modern conflict in Angola takes place, and while I support human rights and standing up to oppression, I don't really know why it needs to be a country. They just need representation and not exploitation. Benguela, the second largest metro area in the country, is known for its beaches and being a popular tourist spot for Angolans domestically. It has a history of being an entryway for slaves to be brought out of Africa. It is also known for the Benguela Railway, a new transport system to connect major cities into the Congo, and was lost during the Civil War, but is now functional again. There are a lot of reconstruction and other mega projects in Angola, most of them funded by China.
A group of Chinese and Angolan businesses is funding the project. A group of Chinese and Angolan businesses are contributing to the project's funding. A group of Chinese and Angolan businesses is funding the project. A group of Chinese and Angolan businesses are contributing to the project's funding. The project is being funded by a consortium of Chinese and Angolan companies. The project is being funded by a consortium of Chinese and Angolan companies. The project is being funded by a consortium of Chinese and Angolan companies. A group of Chinese and Angolan businesses are contributing to the project's funding. A group of Chinese and Angolan businesses are contributing to the project's funding.
The railway connects them to cities like Huambo. This is the part of my research where everything is in Portuguese or just talks about the war. It's what us English people obviously care about. The city was involved heavily in the Civil War, but now has the second highest quality of life in the country. Huambo had their own Ovamundu kingdom that was also successful before European exploration. Pretty cool. Check out the great mountains and hills in the nearby national parks. Lubango is a pretty cool city. It highlights a lot of the great Angolan architecture and is close to amazing nature and is a massive transport hub for the country, making it quite multicultural for its size. It's the second largest city in Angola and... Wait, I thought Benguela was second. Second largest city by metro population is Benguela. Okay, that makes sense. Lubango is third. The largest urban population is Ndalatando with 300,000 people, but that's the urban population. The metro population is less than that? I don't know how that works. Lubango has the second highest urban population with Benguela in fourth, but other sites say it has way less? The way we measure cities is so confusing. Needless to say, I like Angola. It is by far one of the most underrated countries on the continent and well worth your time to learn more about. I know the country isn't in the best shape and has a multitude of problems, but I don't know. It's a cool country. The fact it's losing to Djibouti in tourism is criminal, because Angola is as African as it gets.